But I think there's one more star in the ASEAN which will implement its feed-in tariff program, and everybody is looking and watching at that country right now. And you can see a lot of developers, manufacturers, funders flying into Vietnam because it is the next promised land. So our next speaker will be a very good resource person to give us insights on the market outlook in Vietnam. He has been working in Vietnam for quite some time now, and he is the second attorney to speak in this forum, but in addition to being an attorney, he's also an accountant. So let me introduce to you, and let us give him a round of applause as I call on Oliver Massman to talk about the market outlook in Vietnam. Oliver?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having me here now. I say good afternoon, Vietnam, and not good morning, Vietnam. So I will walk you through a new era for Vietnam, investing in Vietnam's solar power market. Ladies and gentlemen, political will has been mentioned here. They mentioned it, that the political will for a country to run solar, to implement solar is critical. Before I start anything with my presentation, let me tell you one thing. Solar power is the baby of the Prime Minister. Decision number 11 is the first legal basis for solar power in Vietnam, and it is signed by the Prime Minister. It is very clear, the Prime Minister made very clear that it is his baby. So, a new era. In April, decision number 11 came out, and everybody is looking towards Vietnam. Investing in Vietnam in the solar power market. Ladies and gentlemen, I will start with that, the background of the solar energy, but let me give you a little bit of context first. The economy, then the regulatory framework on solar energy, investment guidelines for investors, and my recommendations. Why investing in Vietnam? Vietnam's economy. We have to put that in context. Vietnam cannot, but must have solar power because Vietnam will be the next manufacturing hub of whole Asia. It has 92 million people. The average age of the Vietnamese is 29, one of the youngest population in Asia. Now, another mind-boggling fact. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't make pictures. Ask me, send me an email, I will send you my presentation, okay? Thank you very much for respecting my IP rights. Okay, John Langasal, World Economic Forum, and PricewaterhouseCoopers did a study last year. The topic of the study was, which are the world's most dynamic cities on this planet Earth? The result was number 2, Ho Chi Minh City, number 8, Hanoi. One fact. Vietnam's super rich population is growing faster than anywhere else. Can you see that here? Vietnam, within 2026, 170% growth. Vietnam will be the country measured to its population that will have the fastest growing numbers of US dollar millionaires within the next decade coming. Communist Vietnam has now already more millionaires, US dollar millionaires, than capitalist Philippines. That's a fact. Energy sector background. The electricity demand is expected to increase up to 11.4% until 2020, and then 7 times to 800 billion kilowatt in 2030. This is conservative. Ladies and gentlemen, Vietnam is facing an energy crisis. It will be the next manufacturing hub. And I have another good news. Just 3 days ago, the APEC ministers agreed on having the TPP back, TPP 11, Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. The regional and the international integration of Vietnam is unique. It has signed the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. It's the only country in ASEAN besides Singapore that has a free trade agreement with the European Union. And the bankability and legal certainty standards are mind-boggling. So, let me come, that is the context. Electricity consumption is projected to increase from 85 gigawatt hours in 2010, look at that number, to 251 in 2020. This is just 2 years from now on, ladies and gentlemen. Potential of solar energy industry in Vietnam. The total number of sunshine hours up to 3,000 hours max per year. Potential is here 4 to 6 kilowatt per square meter. The current use is minimal, 5 megawatt. The regulatory framework on solar is very new, came out in April. There is the electricity law, of course, and from 2012. You have the revised power development plan. And I don't want to bother you, but what you have to carry out or carry away from this presentation here, from this slide, is first time decision 11 on solar by the Prime Minister signed. It's Prime Minister's baby here. This is important. It's from April. That's the legal framework for solar. And Circular 16 on setting out requirements on basically template the PPA for solar power projects. Ladies and gentlemen, the law is there. Whether you should accept those standards is another point, and I will give you solutions because there are issues and catch-22s in there. Here. The amended master plan number 7 on development of electricity in Vietnam, it focuses on energy security, energy efficiency, renewable energy for the first time, and power market liberalization. Now, let me say it like this. Vietnam is heavily focusing on coal. Nobody likes coal anymore. Vietnam does not have enough financing for new coal-fired power plants, and does not have the time. I was working on a coal-fired power plant that went into commercial operation 8 years ago, and it took us to negotiate the power purchase agreement with EVN, 200 pages, 6 years, ladies and gentlemen. Electricity Vietnam is the sole off-taker. If there's anything you should consider, and that is a key core issue for you to develop solar, to get solar projects in Vietnam done, is negotiating and how to negotiate with electricity of Vietnam. There's an amended master plan number 7, basically here the strategies of the government is higher quality of electricity supply. Here investment capital demand is staggering approximately 40 billion up to 2020 within the next 2 years, ladies and gentlemen, here. And approximately 108 billion for the period from 2021 to 2030. 74% for power generation development alone, and 26% for power network development. The amended master plan number 7. Vietnam is a command and control country. Vietnam is a command and control country, and this is a master plan. Now, the master plan is a little bit like a dinosaur. Because it's focusing on, for the next decade, to have 20 gigawatt more of coal. Now the Vietnamese, 2 to 3 years ago, they wanted to have financing for coal. They went to the US Exim Bank. And the US Exim Bank, they asked the US Exim Bank, please finance coal. And they told him, basically, that means go home. We don't finance coal anymore. Nobody likes coal anymore. So the Vietnamese have to open other baskets for financing. That's the issue here. Vietnam's electricity energy mix, you can see here, there's a huge portion on coal, then you have hydropower here. Renewable energy part is negligible. It's very, very low here. Currently, Vietnam is developing an energy mix sector with the mainstay of coal-fired power. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the amended master plan number 7, but I've told you that is a dinosaur. I am working with the Minister of Industry and Trade to amend that because it's not working. Vietnam will not implement 20 gigawatt of coal within the next 20 years. That's history already. So they have to focus on renewables. Coal production. The World Bank does not longer support financially coal-fired power plants. The solar decision. It's the baby, the Prime Minister's baby. Listen, ladies and gentlemen. The feed-in tariff is relatively good. It's an on-grid for on-grid projects here is 9.35 US dollar cent. The rate in Vietnamese dong will be adjusted annually. You can have a foreign currency hedging clause there, is no problem. There's no fit for off-grid rooftop projects. Only one off-taker is here, and this is a key issue. You have to get the deal done with electricity of Vietnam if you do on-grid projects. The fit applies for projects which come into operation, and this is a catch-22 within the new law, decision number 11. The feed-in tariff applies for projects which come into operation before 30th of June 2019, and within 20 years from the commercial operation date when the solar plant is ready to sell electricity to the buyer, here, EVN. There's no reference to the consumer price index to address inflation risk, but you can have that in the contract. Why I'm telling you that? Because I have not finalized any solar project PPA, but I have finalized personally work on some wind energy project, and this is the same principle. Okay, you can have net metering too. Here, the base is applicable for rooftop projects. Oversupply amount will be credited to the following month. At the end of the year or expiry of the PPA, exceeded amount will be sold to AVN at 9.35 US dollar cent per kilowatt. Now we come to the solar PPA. Ladies and gentlemen, you will have other law firms, they're praying to you, it's very bad, it's not fraud, not bankable, there's a big problem there. Yes, I started to work in Vietnam 22 years ago. And I was involved in advising developing the very first gas-fired power plants in Vietnam. And there was a big hype. And they said, hey, EVN will open up to BOT projects, but we have no standard PPA. It's not bankable. Everything is not bankable. That was 20 years ago. What do we have? What did we do? We got bankable projects done in Vietnam. Okay? So nothing is impossible here. The message you should take over here from there is, of course, they say it's a non-negotiable PPA. They also said that the standard wind PPA for the projects I have done is non-negotiable. It was also not available, and I got done. So it's not impossible. The current situation, and there you have to work hard, of course, you have to make clear. We come to Vietnam, we want to support Vietnam, but Vietnam has to make concession. How to do that, I will tell you when you hire me as a lawyer. So the issue, one of the key issues here is also that Circular 16 basically has a non-negotiable PPA, and they even do not have international arbitration as a basis. You have to rely on local courts. Now you rely on Vietnamese local court system, you better stay home. You better don't invest in Vietnam. Have I managed to get such international dispute resolutions into the contracts? Yes, I have done that. It takes only time. It takes time, but you have to work with it. You have to be tough. Backup from the government regarding the PPA. In the recently concluded wind PPAs, the government subsidized EVN $1 per kilowatt. The wind PPAs faced a lot of issues. I take that as a precedent. But we have done that. We got international, institutional lenders backup. And ladies and gentlemen, if you work on utility scale, which is above 50 megawatt, if you work on such projects, please remember, you can replace, because the government has made very clear that it will not sign off on the obligations of EVN. Taker and is de facto bankrupt. Let me tell you bluntly. Why? I'll tell you later. So what to do? MIGA. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know what MIGA is? Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency from the World Bank. I'm working currently on a 600 megawatt solar power plant project, and I got pre-approval for MIGA. MIGA is an insurance replacing the government guarantee. This can be a solution for utility scale projects here. So, bottom line here, there is no hint in the law to make the solar PPA bankable. But you should not accept the status quo. Otherwise, you can better stay home if you don't get a bankable PPA. So we have to tell that to the MYT, and we have to talk basically as one. We are working on that. The Vietnamese have to learn. They have to learn their lesson. EVN. The PPA is required to follow a specific template, which is basically not bankable. You have to renegotiate that. It's unclear whether there is a take or pay agreement, for example. The issues here, no amendment of the PPA template is possible, they say, except the supplementation to clarify rights and obligations of the parties. These are the key issues. So your core problem is not to get into Vietnam. Your core problem is nothing else but getting a bankable PPA with EVN. Oh, what is that? I love this song. I'm only human, don't put the blame on me. I'm only EVN. Why I'm putting that here? Because to give you an understanding about EVN. EVN, Electricity of Vietnam, is the sole off-taker. Don't blame them for everything. Since 1994, when they were established, they had to work with the lowest tariffs in Asia, and they managed Mission Impossible to build up a relatively acceptable power generation infrastructure for 92 million people. So EVN has done it. It's a state-owned enterprise, and it's slow. Sometimes a turtle is a Ferrari against EVN. But the point is, basically, that they have to work with the lowest tariffs, and they managed to do that, and they got it done. So the single people, the single person you meet, there are a lot of brilliant guys or ladies in EVN. But it's a state-owned enterprise, and as such, a monster. Don't put the blame on EVN. It's a government, it's a command and control system. The World Bank told the government 1.5 years ago, I was in a meeting, with such low tariffs, EVN, don't strangle it. With such low tariffs, you will kill the power, basically. You will destroy us. The government agreed to the recommendation of the World Bank to increase the electricity price from now on within 2 years or so for 6 years, 60%. But it is not a deal. It is a political. Vietnam is run by 19 kings of Vietnam. We Chinh Vô Cô Vietnam, but in Vietnamese. It means it's a copy-paste of the Chinese system. It's a politburo where they rank up, down. But the problem is, Vietnam also wants to be a market economy. So how to do? Now I give you one solution to get a project done. I'm working on 2 projects now within that framework, and it will take you 6 months from A to Z. This is a 30 megawatt rule, but don't mix it. First, there is an old law, not related to renewable energy. Vietnam, EVN didn't want to do the small projects. So they said everything under 30 megawatt in the provinces, basically you get all the license from the province, and if you do all, you go off-grid, you can negotiate your fit and so on with the off-taker. I'm working on that now, 2 projects. Vietnam has over 220 investment zones, industrial zones. In these, there are certain multinational companies. They approached me and said, Ollie, don't you have solar suppliers? We would like to do an off-grid project. I'm working on 2 now, under 30 megawatt, so we do everything within the province. If you work with the provinces, they will help you. They get plus points in FTA from the government. The new Prime Minister, Nguyen Son Phuc, actually worked 20 years in the FDI, foreign direct investment in Parliament, in his province. That made him Prime Minister, because he brought more than $3 billion into the province. So if you go and develop projects in the province, first thing, remember, make love with the chairman of the People's Committee, because he has the same. Make him friend, and he will help you, because he has benefits from that. And I'm talking zero tolerance. I'm not talking about any motivation of it. I'm talking about what us. This will happen, because he has it, helping you getting solar into the province. So this, if you want to do small projects fast, within 6 months you can develop one. I'm on 2. Go off-grid under 30 megawatt. But don't mix that. If you want to go utility scale, you have to go, if you go above 50 megawatt, you are under the jurisdiction of the Prime Minister. Now many Vietnamese law firms or lawyers tell you, avoid the Prime Minister. Do not avoid the Prime Minister. Do not go under the radar. It's very critical if you don't do that. The Prime Minister wants you to be successful. You sign that. I give you some investment guidelines for foreign investors. What is that? Ladies and gentlemen, I have done an analysis, and this is the key. The freedom and liberalization grade of a country for foreign investment. WTO analysis of liberalization of market access. Vietnam has one of the most liberalized WTO market access service sector commitments. What the hell? Why is Oliver telling you that? I'm telling you because in Vietnam you can establish your own power generation company 100% foreign owned. Now you try that in the country where we are here. It's impossible. Maximum you can get 40%. I'm a licensed foreign lawyer in Vietnam. Look at the legal service sector restrictions in the Philippines, the Philippines and Thailand. In Thailand you cannot even name yourself. This is a key for the future and says it all. I've compared all the WTO market access service sector commitments of all ASEAN nations for market access. Vietnam and Singapore, number one. With regard to the typical restrictions, number of open sectors for foreign investors. Whether you have to have a joint venture partner or not, legally. Don't get me wrong. You should not include the Vietnamese partner into the legal corporate structure. But don't make a mistake. You should work together with the Vietnamese. That's smart and that's smart. You should do that. But on a contractual basis. This is the key for your success in Vietnam. The market access and forms of investment in the power market. Here, you can see that. There's no foreign ownership restriction, 100%. The investment forms, you can have a limited liability company, you can choose joint venture if you want. You can have, basically, you can use the BOT legal framework, public-private partnership, and you should do that. If you get your project, your solar project on the BOT list, where we can apply for, it takes time, I know. This is a key issue. It's talking for good, but it takes time, yes. It takes 1 year. But the benefit, if you get it on the BOT list, land use right is for free. No penny. So you do your commercial calculation, whether you can wait 1 year and get a free land use right or not. It's a commercial. You do that. But it's a key issue, and my recommendation to use the PPP. This is the best investment form, BOT. It's tested. There have been projects, precedent large-scale BOT power projects in Vietnam, and if you talk to the asset holders, please don't make pictures. I will send you my presentation. Please. Please. Okay, there are precedent large-scale BOT power projects, FUMI 2.2, FUMI 3. If you talk to EDF, for example, they love FUMI 2.0. They love it. They love it. Very successful. The EVN honored the PPA on the last payment for nearly 20 years already now. So, great record. Investment incentives here, as I said, basically, you can have the land for free if you have it on the BOT list. Then you have an exemption for land rental within 3 years from the operation date. Even if you don't have it on the BOT list, you have import duty exemption for all the assets, for all the equipment that forms fixed parts of the assets. Here, corporate income tax rate is 10%, half of 20% standard, 15 years for new enterprises investing in power plant projects. Total tax exemptions within 4 years and tax reduction by 50% in the next 9 years. It's considerable. It's reasonable. How should you start? First, the investor has to obtain prior agreement of EVN on power purchase prior to licensing procedure. So the first thing is you have to go to EVN. If you go to the province, take the chairman, make love with him, and then go together. Commitment of banks, credit institution on financing. Yeah. It's an issue, but think about MIGA, what I told you. Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency for large-scale projects. Then you have to get the in-principle approval of the local people's committee prior to issuance of investment registration certificate. This is your license, and the enterprise registration certificate. A solar power plant must obtain a power generation permit from the competent state authority. If you go to the provinces, it's the DOIT, Department of Industry and Trade. That gives you that. Term of permit here is maximum 20 years for large-scale power plants with particular important meaning on economy, society, national defense, and security, and so on. The permit cannot be renewed, but the investor may apply for a new one within 60 days prior to the expiry date of the current permit. Now I'll walk you through the project licensing. Step 1. Investor obtains approval from the competent authority, Prime Minister, approving the solar power plant as part of the Power Development Master Plan. Step 2. Investor obtains, in principle, approval from the competent People's Committee, basically approving the solar power plant project, land, demand, location, environment, construction plan. Step 3. Application for issuance of the IRC, Investment Registration Certificate, is your license, and the ERC, Enterprise Registration Certificate. 4. Preparation of construction operation of the solar power plant, for example, acquiring land area, site clearance, preparation, land investigation, and environmental assessment. Listen, you have a lot of unexploded audience in Vietnam. You know this. Step 5, the project company to obtain necessary permits, electricity generation permit, relevant agreements, PPA for its and the power plant's operation. Step 6, construction of solar power plant and operation. My recommendations for investors: make use of the public-private partnership forms, BOT. Take due care on negotiations of the PPA. Do not accept the status quo. I have never accepted the status quo in Vietnam. You should not do that. Vietnam needs you. Take that here. And the Vietnamese, if you take anything out of my presentation about Vietnamese mentality, take this. The Vietnamese are the most pragmatic people you can ever meet. They are very tuk zup. Tuk zup means pragmatic. You can make the deals with them. Thank you very much. Please, Florian. Do you have anybody has a microphone for Florian? Microphone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Florian Benholt from Symbio Solar. I just wanted to ask if there's any update on the direct PPA, so having a power purchase agreement with a CNI off-taker under the recent rules, there was always some uncertainty. I wanted to ask if there are any updates, if that is possible today.
There's no legal update, but I would really approach that as a given. You can go ahead with that. Yes.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Jesse Todo. I'm here as a consultant, but I also work with the International Copper Association, and we work a bit in Vietnam. In 2014, 2015, there are already three local inverter manufacturers in Vietnam, and at the time, they also have 5 solar PV testing laboratories. And of course, they have a very mature wire and cables market. My question is this: do you think these are key success factors for the development of the solar PV market in Vietnam? Because we don't have those.
Pardon?
We don't have those in the Philippines. We don't have local.
I didn't get you acoustically. You mean local partners?
No, I mean, in Vietnam, there are already at least 3 inverter manufacturers. Inverters.
Yes.
And they have, at least 5 testing laboratories.
Yeah.
And of course, they have very mature wires and cables market. We only have the last one here in the Philippines. My question is, do you think these are key factors for the successful development of the solar PV markets in Vietnam that
Yes, definitely.
the Philippines could learn from?
Yes, definitely, and the Philippines, that's what the Philippines can learn from Vietnam, although the Philippines started earlier and Vietnam is a latecomer. Yes, definitely. And please listen once more, it's very important. Legally, you don't have to cooperate and include any joint venture partner or any Vietnamese into your local corporate structure, but you must cooperate with the Vietnamese, and you must cooperate with such companies, basically, to be successful. You can do that on a contractual basis, you can have termination agreements if they don't perform, and the Vietnamese are very industrious, they're very hardworking, very pragmatic and focused, and you must use them. For example, what I can help you, if you want, I can open doors for you. I have direct contact via one person to the Prime Minister. I speak Vietnamese like I speak English. So it helps. I have a lot of Vietnamese friends who worked 20 years as engineers in EVN, Electricity of Vietnam. They ask me and they say, Ollie, don't you have a foreign investor basically we can work together with? I mean, they want to leave EVN. They want to go. It's legal. They can terminate EVN and they want to work for the private sector. I have just recommended two engineers to two different foreign investors in the solar sector, and they're very happy with the people. They're completely happy. These guys have worked 20 years in EVN. They know their deal. It's their turf. Yes, the answer is definitely yes.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions?
One question.
Please.
I'd just like to know what is the effective generation cost of solar in Vietnam?
Nobody knows yet because it hasn't been done yet. I would lie if I tell you we know the effective generation because, I mean, the law came out in April and there are now ballpark figure, about 60 projects in the pipeline, but it's untested. Nobody really knows what that is. Let me tell you the biggest mistake you can make, that you end up with super, super high costs. Splitting, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of consultants advise, okay, you have a 100 megawatt project, okay, you make 2 out of it, to go under the radar of the Prime Minister, 49, 40, or 45 megawatt, just for the sake of going under the radar of the Prime Minister's jurisdiction. That is as stupid as hell. The Prime Minister wants you to succeed. And you should make use of it, basically. It's just one person you can apply. Otherwise, you have to apply at the MPI. Or the DPI, Department of Planning Investment, or Ministry of Planning Investment. So what do you want? So I think there are a lot of issues unknown, untested yet. I can't really answer. But definitely, if there's also a catch-22. Let me tell you that. There's a catch-22. The feed-in tariff is only valid until 30 of June 2019. And you have to reach commercial operation date until that day. Ladies and gentlemen, when I have my projects I'm working on now, my solar projects, my clients telling me they're doing 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt, they're telling me that roughly they need 12 months to construct, roughly. Now, calculate that back, 30 of June 2019, 30 of June 2018, ladies and gentlemen, the Vietnamese are not stupid, they're smart, they're playing a calculated game of risk with the FIT because they give us so little time for developing the project. That's the real thing. But can you do projects within that time frame? You can. I'm working on, and we will finalize within 2-3 months from now on. But if you want to enjoy the 9.35, and if you really want to come to Vietnam, you have to start tomorrow. Remember, Vietnam is facing an energy crisis. There's no question that they desperately need electricity. Vietnam will be the next manufacturing hub of whole Asia. The Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement will drive manufacturing into Vietnam, and the free trade agreement as a signed deal with Europe is driving now already manufacturing out of China into Vietnam, huge numbers. And what do they need? They need electricity. First, it's a political will. Second, it's a brutal demand. And I'm very sure that that will drive the development of renewables. Because you can't develop a gas-fired power or a coal-fired power plant within 1 year. Forget it, or in 2 years, or 3 years even. No, there's no way. So that's a future and the chance for solar and renewable. This is the time. And there's no auction system. And ladies and gentlemen, let me give you some icing on the cake. If you are a European company, or if you are a TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership eligible company, Vietnam has agreed on the highest level of bankability in those agreements, and you should argue to make use of those agreements. For example, the free trade agreement, in the free trade agreement, Vietnam have committed to implement ISDS with offshore enforcement. Ladies and gentlemen, do we really know what that means? If you have the ISDS protection for your project documentation, you go, if you have trouble, sue the Vietnamese government in international arbitration in New York. You, for example, in case you win, you sit yourself in a taxi, you drive to John F. Kennedy Airport, you go to the customs, you put the award in front of the customs, and then you say, I'm waiting. For what? The next airplane off, Vietnam Airlines is yours. Offshore enforcement. Vietnam has agreed on offshore enforcement. Germany does not accept ISDS. When I was invited as a first foreigner to give a presentation in front of the members of the National Assembly last year, 17th of June, I made that my point, and I got standing ovations. Vietnam will have the highest level of legal standards, legal security, legal certainty standards, after ratification of the trade agreement, free trade agreement, and the TPP. And other countries cannot compete in ASEAN. There is no other country in ASEAN that has these levels, except the TPP signatories and Vietnam. That's a fact. Thank you very much. My pleasure.